Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Power Women in Insurance podcast. Today, I've got Meg McKeen, and she is amazing. I know I say that about so many people, and so many people are amazing, but Meg is coming back to the podcast. I think she was on 2, 3 years ago, but when we talked last time, she was in a big change in her life, a big change in her career, stepping into things that were scary, and at the same point, being able to really embrace what she really wanted and going after it. So we are pumped and excited to be able to have Meg back on and talk to you a little bit about what's been going on in her life. So Meg, welcome to the podcast.
Teresa, thanks for asking me to come back. I miss you. We had such a good conversation the
I
first time
did.
around, and you're just one of my favorite humans swimming around in this big insurance sea. And it's just fun to take a minute here and reconnect and catch up a little bit. So thanks for having me.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I can't wait till someday we're in the same area together. So I think that would be amazing if we could maybe like get together sometime in person. But I do think this whole Zoom thing and the whole like concept of the video chat that people have really embraced since COVID and all that has really brought a lot of people back together that wouldn't necessarily be sitting together in those types of situations, having these types of conversations. And I love that you've embraced so much of that with your career, and I love that. I feel like I think businesses are also embracing that too. I mean, I know most of my listeners know we are a virtual agency and we are on Zoom all day long. So I run an agency off of Zoom. And I love the fact that we can also connect with other people in the industry over it. So I appreciate you taking the time. I think it's just great. And I love that we're doing this.
Yeah, I love it too. And thanks for mentioning, Zoom has become an essential tool for me and
Yes.
my business and most businesses. And to be honest, some days I kind of resent it. I love the days where I maybe have old school phone calls or not as many meetings and I can not do my makeup and not do my hair,
Yeah.
depending on who's on the other end of it. And so I appreciate that the business you're building, the business I'm building couldn't have existed this way in another time. And
Yeah.
so it's really cool to reflect on that a little bit. And I also love that in person is an option. During COVID,
Hmm.
we didn't really have a choice. So
True.
we did what we had to do. And now I'm seeing, events have come back
Yeah.
and we're doing more of that in-person gathering if that feels appropriate and right for you. And even that, there's so much more creativity. I'm not seeing as many
Hmm.
of these big sort of massive blown out conferences. I'm seeing a lot more opportunities for more intimate connection, and I am here for it. I love it.
100%. And I think
Yeah.
we're hearing that that's what people want too. It's not just, what's out there, but I mean, we did a part of the Insurance Mavericks, so it's a Facebook group, but we did a small group and we thought we were going to have like 50 people. We ended up with like 86, which was great, but we ended up doing these breakout groups, right? So we had these in different rooms, and it was great because people really, really talked about how much they felt like they got to know people. They got to ask the questions that they wanted, not just be talked at, right? That a lot of conferences we go to do that. And I love that we were able to do that. And I think that that's what people want. They want that connection. People want more interaction, more connection. They want to get to know you. They want to get to know your family. They want to get to know your staff, your business model, whatever it may be that people are talking about. And I love that that's kind of come out of COVID and all that, is that people are craving, I think, a different type of connection.
Yeah. Can I make a confession
Oh
here? Is
yeah,
this I feel like
absolutely.
Barbara Walters back in the day. You can whisper in my ear. I struggle. I love, love, love making new connections. And I've worked on creating some boundaries around new connections to make sure that
Mm,
I can actually nurture them
yeah,
once I make them, which is it's a good problem to have. But I really struggle with the follow through
yeah.
and then making sure, I might have a great Zoom meeting with somebody. It's 30 minutes. Maybe it's another consultant in the industry or a friend. Oh, you need to meet this person. You'd have so much in common. And we do. We have a great 30-minute session, or in your case, a great networking opportunity through your Facebook group. And then it just kind of dies on the vine. And I've
Yeah.
tried to build some technology backstops for me, setting reminders and being very intentional about it. And what I've learned, or what I'm learning, and I think I need to really acknowledge, is that it's a quality, not quantity
Hmm.
game. And
Yeah.
the 6 degrees of separation thing is pretty true in our industry. If I don't know the person you're looking for, chances are I know someone who does. And so
Yeah.
is it necessary that I know every independent agent across the country, or is it important that I meet the ones who are values aligned and on a similar
Yeah.
mission that I am on? And I think part of it is a shift in just the growth of my business. And in the
Mhm.
beginning, everything is a good opportunity and every new connection is a good one. And I think building more confidence and more just experience under my proverbial belt is
Mhm.
showing me that, like, maybe that's not true or was true then, but isn't true anymore. So I'm
Love that.
2025, I'm really trying to focus on nurturing and really showing up and being present for the relationships I have. And it doesn't mean that the door isn't open to new ones, but I feel bad. I personally feel bad when I can't
Yeah.
carry my weight in these new relationships.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think there's a great interview I think with Jane Fonda, and she says that women need women in their lives, and we need people in our lives across the board. That people are healthier, they live longer. That there's real science behind that connection. And I think sometimes we push ourselves so hard to to work, to do all these things, and sometimes we don't take the time to just stop and talk to people. And even if we're at a conference, even if we're on Zoom, even if we're on whatever type of situation, just stopping, making eye contact, being able to be present in the moment, not on our phone, not on our email, whatever. I think is really, really, really a struggle for a lot of people, is just really being present. But when you can nurture those deeper relationships, it's easier to be present, because I think you want that deeper connection. So you're not going to reach for your phone. You're not going to be checking your email. You're not going to be thinking about 18 other things. I know for me, the older that I get, I find that I have a lot of friends, but the friends I have are friends I've had in the vast majority for like 20 years, 30 years, whatever. And I love those friends. But that's what I love, is that we don't have to be around each other all the time, but we know each other, right? We can call each other if we need something. Friday night, I'm supposed to be having dinner with some girlfriends from high school, and I love that. But we talk maybe 3, 4 times a year, but it's good quality talk when we talk. We don't talk every day, and it's not how do I put it? It's not just small talk. It's real talk when we get together. And I think that that quality, like you're talking about, is something that we should all really, really work for. Because I
Yeah.
think it's too easy to be too passive about our relationships.
Yeah. Well, and then yes, and I don't want to gloss over amazing. And I love that you have those kind of friendships that months can go by and you can just pick up right where you left off. And those are truly the best. And there's no pressure, there's no hurt
Right.
feelings, there's no, oh, you're neglecting me. Oh, is she mad at me? Oh, are you avoiding me? What? None of that. You just show up and you're there and you haven't really missed a beat. And I think those are really beautiful. It takes time to
Yeah.
get there. And I'm realizing the advantage of making those friendships in a pre-technology world was they existed very much in person and intentionally. You had to make a plan to go to the mall to meet
Yes.
on Sunday afternoon, right? Like it was very different than it is now, where we've got all sorts of, like you said, distractions and
Hmm.
also easy outs. We're overscheduled, we're overextended, we're overcommitted, and we're having a hard time saying no, which is only perpetuating the problem. And one of
Yeah.
the things I've been really thinking about is my relationship with social media and my phone and the level of connection. And it's important to note I am not actively selling insurance anymore. I did it for a portion of my career and I'm still licensed, but my business isn't on demand like yours is. For example, I can't turn my phone, I mean, I can turn my phone off now, but back then,
Yeah.
to be out of pocket for 3 days or 4 days, that would have been a real hardship in my business then. So, but I'm playing with notifications. And what if I turn off all my notifications, which I did over the weekend,
Mm.
and kind of forgot that I had turned them off. And so
Okay.
I didn't really look at my phone
I
because
love that.
nothing was telling me I needed to. It
Yeah.
was almost this Pavlovian response that I had developed that I didn't even realize
True.
that I had developed. And so that's not the right answer. I do need to be connected to some degree, but it goes back to the boundaries thing. And I think it's whether it's self-imposed, it's verbal boundaries or technology boundaries. I think we're all wrestling with what's the right amount and the right
Yes.
quality and quantity and what do we protect and what do we keep out, and it's just fascinating.
Absolutely. So one thing we haven't mentioned is you do have a wonderful business called Adjunct Advisors, and you help, you coach, you have a podcast that is amazing. You are on a lot of great podcasts as well. So if anybody wants to be able to find Meg out there, she has a podcast called Bound and Determined. She has a great business that helps to be able to coach with sales, personal types of personal growth, career growth, all of those wonderful things. So as you are seeing people coming out of all the COVID stuff and everything, I know we're out. I know we're out. I'm not trying to drag back into that conversation, but
Hmm.
we are out completely. But I think, like, are you seeing out there that people have changed how they want to work, how they want to interact with other people as you do your consulting business and your podcast and everything? What are you seeing out there that is maybe something that we need to really talk about how business has changed over the course of and relationships? Even our clients have changed. They're not coming into our offices as much, right? Those types of things. Maybe they're not calling as much. Maybe we're texting more. We're using more media type opportunities. What are you seeing out there in the industry right now that maybe even is a little challenging for people, that they're trying to adjust to?
Hmm. I love it. And I don't think in my lifetime, in the rest of my lifetime, that we will ever not talk about COVID. And
Right.
it's still fresh. And yeah, it's been over discussed in many ways, but it was such a marker for
Yeah.
our industry and for our generation and for the world that we live in right now that it will be the turning point in many ways. I think we'll be
Mhm.
studying about it. Our future generations will be studying about it forever, frankly. But I think in our industry, more than anywhere else, a lot of the focus has been on, are we hybrid? Are we remote? Are we back in the office? And there's a lot of discussion around the very tactical outcomes of COVID. People want
Mhm.
to see us in person. No, they don't. Kind of the things that you were identifying. Where I tap in is what's under the surface of all of that. And so
Mhm.
when a woman kicks back and says, I don't want to return to the office, it's not because she doesn't like her coworkers. And it's not because the office furniture is outdated and ugly or her boss has bad breath. It's none of those things. It's
Right.
that COVID, in many ways, was a huge drain for her as potentially a working woman or a working mother, partner, whatever her own personal, but there were benefits to it. There
Hmm.
were 2 hours of her day that she got back because she wasn't commuting. There
Yep.
was 30 minutes she got back in the morning because she could do a workout and she didn't have to do a full face of makeup and shave her legs and do her hair. There was
Yep.
a whole different version of her that existed during that time that she has had to let go of in order to quote unquote go back to normal. But that was a really good normal for her. And so what's happened now is frustration, some resentment, some angst.
Yeah.
And then you layer on that like Gen X women are a huge swath of the insurance industry right now. And a lot of them are either in or entering menopause. And there's
Yeah.
this really interesting, fascinating thing, and I'm experiencing it right now myself, where I'm not going to swear I'll be a lady on your podcast, but the I don't give an F
Hmm.
factor
Yeah.
is like out the window. Like I say what I mean, I do what I want, take it or leave it. And so all these things are happening simultaneously and women are coming to me quietly, they're in my DMs, they're loudly on the podcast. They're saying, "I don't want to play this game anymore. I
Yeah.
want freedom, I want choice. I want to do good work. I need to make a living. I need to support my family." In many cases, women are breadwinners that are approaching me.
Hmm.
They have to work. This isn't about that. It's I want to work with a different set of rules in front of me. And
Hmm.
I love it. I'm here for it. It's the game I'm playing too. I
Yeah.
made
Yeah.
that decision pre-COVID, but it's worked out for me. I can't say that it will for everyone, but on the flip side, it's making some folks in the industry really uncomfortable
Hmm.
because people who have historically towed the line and who have played the game and put their head down and been good little worker bees, and I'm not diminishing the people who are devoted to their
Right.
job. We love them for that, and I am to mine, but they're not playing that game anymore.
Hmm.
And so somebody who's been quote unquote satisfied for the last 20 years, but now wants something, it's very out of characteristic for that woman to ask. It's also very uncharacteristic to hear that. as the
Hmm.
recipient of the
Yeah.
request. And so it's a boundaries thing. Again, it all comes back to those boundaries. And we are rewriting what that relationship with work looks like in
Hmm.
many, many cases. And we're in the middle of it. I have no idea how this is going to go, except to say Generation X and the millennials that are here are already, I'm sorry, Gen Z who's coming in and the millennials that are here, they've already figured that out. And so
Right.
I don't think it's going to change. I don't think that we're going back. I think we're going forward. And so it's going to be really
Yep.
interesting to see how it all shakes out. As a sociologist at heart who does this for a living, I'm here for it. I love it. Bring on the discomfort. Let's have these squishy, messy conversations and figure this out because we need all of the people, as you
We
know.
do.
And I think this goes back to the root issue is we've got to create an environment, whether it's in our individual offices or remote or in the industry at large, that people want to show up for. And we've
Yeah.
got a lot of work to do in that department.
And I think that's how we're really going to attract the more, how do I put it? People do better work when they love what they are doing, the way that they're doing it. And I think that's how we're going to really attract the higher functioning team members that we want in, but they need that flexibility. Maybe they need that work environment that matches their spirit, their soul, right? And so, I mean, like we are virtual, we are on Zoom all the time, but I mean, I love it because I can get up and if I go down the hall, go to the restroom, whatever, I just move my laundry over, and I love it when I do that, right? I couldn't do that when I was in an office. And it allows me to be really present if something is going on. And sometimes like I can, say, hey, I'm just really exhausted today. I just need to go, on my end. I mean, I'm an owner, so it's a little different, but I can say, hey, I'm going to be like an hour late, but I'm not going to be 3 hours late or just take the whole day off. I find that with that flexible work schedule ish, that we pick up a little bit more, that we do little things here and there. We're a lot more present when we're here. Now, I don't have children at home. It's a very different world for those people that have children at home, those types of things. But it's nice when I can merge my life and my career to where I don't have to make a choice. I don't have to, oh, I got to work until, 7 and then drive 45 minutes home, or I have to think about traffic on the way home, or, hey, I'm stuck in traffic now because there's an accident up ahead. And then people come to work stressed because they've been sitting in that car forever. And I love the fact that we don't have to do that anymore. I
Mhm.
just love that. And I'm like you said, I'm really interested to see what's going to happen in the next 10 years on work stuff. I think it'll be very, very interesting. And the insurance industry typically is a little slower to adapt some of these things, but I think that with COVID, it forced us to.
Yeah.
I think it forced the industry to seriously look, do you have to be in an office? Do you have to blah blah blah? I think a lot of companies have adopted voice over IP phones more than they did before, so that way they can move forward in this a little bit more virtual work environment. And I'm interested to see where it's going to be because I think it's going to be super cool.
Yeah, and I do see this has popped up in my business as a potential, I guess, opportunity. I don't know where it could go, but when you are virtual or essentially virtual as a team, the times that you do come together in person become even more meaningful and even more intentional. And so maybe it's once a year you meet up for an offsite somewhere and you're doing a very thoughtful team building exercise, or
Yep.
you're just building that community and that camaraderie that you kind of take for granted when you're in a physical office. And I heard from a woman the other day, and she's hybrid, and so they're in the office on opposite days, but like 2 days or 3 days out of the week. And she
Okay.
said, what's so frustrating is that we quote unquote have to be in the office, but everybody's in their office with the door closed on
Yep.
Zoom or on Teams. And she's like, what am I doing here? And I think this might be an opportunity where we've missed the forest for the trees, right? And I don't want
Yeah.
to discount, we've got a ton of money in our industry tied up in real estate. Like
Yeah.
we've got
Yeah.
long-term leases for these massive buildings that we're running at a loss right now because
Yep.
there's nobody in there utilizing them. And I respect that as a business decision. But believing wholeheartedly as I do that at the end of the day, nothing happens in this industry if it isn't for the people that
Yep.
are making the decisions and that are showing up every day. I think we're missing it a little bit in prioritizing that structure versus what do you actually need in order to get your job done. And oh, I see you're a highly compensated six-figure, underwriter, for example, and yet we're forcing you to work in an environment that isn't maximizing your contribution at that pay level and also your skill level. And it's not really about the dollars, it's about what do we individually need as humans to thrive at work? And is it reasonable and possible that we can accommodate that? And like you said, COVID showed us over the course of a weekend that
Yeah.
we could do that. I mean, literally the industry flipped almost essentially, other than the essential workers, to remote almost
Yeah.
instantly. And so it's certainly not going away. It's just fascinating to watch on the sidelines as some companies dig their heels in and others fully embrace it like you have. And
Yeah.
um, I think the deciding factor is going to be this generation coming in because, like I said, they're playing a different game.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, absolutely. My daughter works with me and she's 26. Well, she turns 26 at the end of the month. And it's been interesting because she lives in Denver and I live in Dallas. So and I love that we get to see each other every day because we're on Zoom and we get to be able to ask those questions. And then because she lives in Denver, she's an hour behind me. So I'll stick around after work and we just talk and we'll just talk about work stuff, but we also talk about family stuff and just life in general. And it is fun to have that relationship with somebody who is so far away. And like I have a team member in Alabama, and she and I met for the first time at a conference. She ended up going to a conference with me. And when we went, and as soon as she got off the plane, it was like we just knew each other. It was just this great camaraderie. And we actually flew her in again this year because we did team pictures. We did new team pictures for everybody and flew her down to Austin. And then we have a team member in Austin and brought Kaylee in from Austin. And like you said, it was so impactful when all of us got together. It was, I hate to put it this way, it was almost like a spiritual retreat kind of thing
yeah.
because we got to really see each other and hug each other and all those good things. And I saw the value of both sides of it, of being able to be really present with each other and yet at the same point being able to live in separate places but feeling like we know each other and we have that great relationship. And one thing I do with my team is I do have a 30-minute one-on-one every other week with each team member. So we have a little bit more one-on-one time. How many people sit in our offices and we never ever have any one-on-one time with anybody who we work with. And we aren't
Mhm.
building that relationship and building that rapport. We're literally just sitting at a desk with, like you said, a door closed and on a Teams meeting, right? And I think whether we're in person or whether we're virtual, both environments take that intentionality to be able to build those relationships where we know, like, and trust each other because we still have to have that. And I think that's one thing a lot of people are worried about is that if people are not physically together all the time, that they're not going to trust each other. But I think, this type of situation right now, you and I've never physically met in person, but if we did, I would be like, oh my gosh, it's Meg. I'm so
Mhm. I
excited.
know. Same. Yeah.
I think that
Mhm.
brings us together and we need to make sure that we maximize that. I think people that send people off to work from home and then they have no camaraderie and team building activities, that's when I think you get a lot of that disconnect and a lot of the loneliness and a lot of those things that maybe we're all worried about for having that virtual environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you have to be intentional about this.
Yeah.
I love that you're doing these every other 30-minute. You've protected that time on the calendar. It's a quote unquote safe space
Hmm.
for your team members to come to you with whatever it is. And maybe it's just, hey, did you catch the news last night? Or how's your weather? How are the kids? That kind of thing. It's really important that you protect that time. I think about times in my career, I've had some bosses that were bosses. They were super
Yeah.
intense and they were like all in my business and, too much. And then I've had some that were really hands off. And I remember with one in particular who was really hands off, I loved it most days, but there were days when I really needed support.
Right.
And I hadn't built the rapport with that person to feel comfortable that I could reach out in a
Mm.
way that wasn't intrusive or that I wasn't going to feel small or
Mm.
inept for asking. And so I think there's some sort of sweet spot here. Like I love that I'm here if you need me energy,
Hmm.
but as a woman, and this is something still at 46 I'm working through in a romantic relationship is asking for what I want and
Mhm.
asking for what I need and using my voice. And that is true in our personal relationships and it's true at work too. If somebody wants to sit down and talk with you about their compensation or feels that they've been treated
Mhm.
unfairly or there's something and you haven't created an avenue for them to have that conversation with you, the only expectation is that they're going to catch you on the fly while you're walking into your next meeting. I'm not going to say anything. That's not the right time. And I'm going to be all in my feelings and all in my head and all bound up about it.
Yep.
It's just so wise of you to say the time is here if you want to take it. And I just think that's in this virtual world, we want to not be overboard. We don't want to be checking people's green light status on like to make sure that they're moving their mouse. I think that's ridiculous in this
Yeah,
day and age. If you want to
exactly.
go take a 20-minute mental health break or you want to go to the bathroom or you want to go work out, like please go do those things. That is the
Yep.
benefit of working from home. But there's got to be somewhere in between where we keep that literal door open or the virtual one for good
Yep.
communication.
Well, and I think too, especially depending, sometimes people make up stories in their heads about what's going on. And maybe we think, oh, that person isn't working, or we think, oh, that person isn't doing what they need to be doing, or whatever. And if we don't have that exposure to them, then we don't know if we make up those stories in our own head, right? And I think that we have to be intentional again about making sure we're not making those things up, right? That we're not just assuming blank, assuming, oh, they're not working, or oh, they're not picking up extra hours, or oh, if they're going to go work out, that they, that's 30 minutes that day that they're not going to be working. They may work an extra 30 minutes that day or whatever it may be. But I think sometimes if we don't have that rapport and that relationship and that intentional communication, we make up stories in our own heads. And
Yeah.
most of the time, they're not accurate.
Thank you for validating that I am not the only one who can have an entire two-sided conversation with myself
Yes.
in my, like, I have identified the problem, I have talked about the problem and solved the problem with another person in my head. I mean, it
Yeah.
is so inefficient and ridiculous, and yet I do it all day long. I anticipate what
Yeah.
I think is going on, and I also anticipate the response. And what I see, I work with different leaders and different levels in the industry, and
Mhm.
I see them having this sort of internal debate. I think there's a problem. I think there's something going on,
Yeah.
but they don't get to the point of actually taking action.
Hmm.
Like, ask Bob. Bob, I see that you're habitually running late in the morning. What's going on with Bob? Maybe Bob's got a daycare issue, or Bob's got a dog that's got health problems, or Bob,
Right.
we've assumed that Bob is lazy. Bob can't get to work on time. And this is a terrible example, but I think you get the point. Like,
Yeah.
we jump to so many conclusions when the truth is usually never as awful as whatever we've, fantasized about in our minds. And guess what? That's another opportunity to build connection. And because
Mhm.
of our own fear or our own lack of confidence these are not easy
Yeah.
conversations to have. Confrontation is fundamentally difficult for the majority
It
of people.
is.
Let's be honest. Some
It
people
is.
really enjoy it. I do not. Most people I meet do not. And so stepping into that leadership persona can be tough, but it's
Mhm.
usually so much better after, or you just know what you're dealing with. Now you have facts. Now
Yep.
you've taken it out of
And now you can
this
really deal with
messy.
it rather than
Yeah.
dealing with the maybe of it.
Yeah.
I think, and I think too, we have to be able to me as a leader. Okay, so to me as a leader, and I think a leader is a weird definition because it doesn't mean you have to own the agency. It doesn't mean you have to do
Got
stuff.
it.
You can be
Agreed.
like, you can be anybody, right? If you're leading a conversation, if you're a part of something, you're leading something. Whether or not, I don't like the term leader specifically, and the main reason is just because it indicates a specific, like, everybody leads in one way or another. People, you can go to a conference and you can listen to somebody speak and never ever talk to them, and that person in your mind says something that really impacted you, and you take it with you, right? And that person, it does, everybody's a leader in their own way, I guess, is kind of what I'm trying to say. But I think too, Brene Brown has a great things she talks about with her husband. And she says that on the weekends, whenever they, because they have kids and all this, their kids are grown, but when they were teenagers, whatever, when they're done at Friday at 5 o'clock, whatever that timeline is, and her husband comes home, he may have a totally different agenda for the weekend than she does. Maybe he wants to rest. Maybe he wants to relax. Maybe she wants to do home renovations, right? And if they don't have that conversation about what they want to get out of their weekend, then all of a sudden she thinks he's being lazy and he thinks that she's not letting him relax or whatever.
Yeah.
And they just didn't communicate with each other about what they wanted out of the weekend. So therefore, maybe he comes in and he says, you know what, let me relax Friday and Saturday. We'll do a couple home renovation things on Sunday. And she's like, okay, we're gonna create a balance here because we're gonna communicate, we're gonna talk about it. But how many of us want to sit on the couch on a weekend and we're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to go do all these things that my spouse or my partner maybe wants me to do, but we don't ever say anything. Then all of a sudden we build up this resentment of, I don't want to go do that. I don't want to go out for dinner. I don't want to go to a movie. I just want to sit on the couch. I want to relax. But if we don't express that, then we're not going to be good communicators. We're not going to be good. And that is being a leader, is being able to say, hey, this is what I want. This is important to me. Maybe in our careers, maybe if we want to be able to say, hey, some of the systems and operations maybe that need to be updated. We talked a little bit about the changes in technology that have really kind of come about in agencies and different spaces. And maybe if there's a way to make it a little bit more efficient, right? If we step up and we express that, we are a leader in that way. But I think we have to recognize when there's a little bit of that yibber yabber going on in our head so we can like stop it, identify it, or do something about it. I really think that's something we all have to step up into to be able to be really dynamic individuals in our positions and in our lives.
Yeah, agreed. There's so much, we love to separate the personal and the professional because we think, I don't know what we think. We think that's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
There's so much that we can learn from the way we relate personally to each other and to the way that
Mm-hmm.
we relate professionally. And I love that you brought, I wish I could say she was actually my friend Brene Brown, but like same. I respect and
I
admire
love
her
her.
research and her work so much, and the way that she
Mhm.
explains things feels so not confrontational, but just so simple. It's like, oh, of course, that makes so much sense. And I love that she's just built this. There's just such a great respect for her.
Yeah.
And you're totally right. Like, when has communication not helped?
Yeah.
Like, when has communication not been the answer when you're feeling a certain way? And I would add, laying on the couch when my partner is, scurrying around doing things, the guilt.
Yeah.
It's not resentment, it's guilt that I feel
Yep.
like I should be participating. I should be pulling my weight. I should be living up to whatever fantasy I think he's built of me in his mind. And if I'm not, I'm letting
Yeah.
him down and I'm letting myself down. And it's like, holy guacamole, these are real feelings that we're having. And take the weekend out of it and make it a Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. when you didn't get a good night of sleep the night before, or you've got something going on with one of your kiddos or one of your parents,
Mhm.
and your mind
Mhm.
is a million miles away, and you're supposed to be showing up in one way and you're not. Guess what? Guilt, resentment,
Yeah.
shame, all the same emotions are coming up, and yet we don't have a container in the workplace to acknowledge that human experience that we're having. Fortunately, many of us have it in our personal relationships, but it has still become a, well, you must be lazy, you must not have the tools you need, you must need more. No, it's something in us. It's a deeper
Mhm.
thing than that. And I think when you talk about leadership, the next generation of leaders who understand that distinction, that you cannot technology a human problem.
Right.
Technology will not solve a human problem. They're two very separate parts of our business.
Yep.
I love the comfort that can come from technology, right? Well, we wrote a check, we implemented a software, now we've got a system, but you still have human beings navigating that system.
Yep.
And I think the leaders that understand the difference and know how to speak to both sides are going to be the ones that really thrive
Mm.
generationally. We just need a million of them. We need Brene to start recruiting for the insurance industry.
Exactly.
I daydream. I'm going to go on the record. We have got to get Brene in front of a crowd of insurance
Oh
executives.
my
And
gosh, yes.
her speaking fee is probably $1 million, but I'm going on the record. I want to see it happen. I would love to make it happen if I can figure out how. But that sort of no BS wisdom,
Yeah.
this is daily life. This is how we're relationshiping as human beings. It's just so valuable in our industry. So I
Yeah.
know you get that. And I love that your team that you have built and that you continue to grow gets to work for you. Like, how cool. Because I think that's the key to all of this is you can't say you want certain things for the people
Hmm.
that you work with and then not either take them for yourself or model them for other
Yeah.
people. I think you have to live that truth. And so many leaders are saying, no, we want work-life balance. And then they're emailing at 10 o'clock at night. It's a
Right.
classic example of what's going on here. What is the message you're actually sending? Because what we're getting right now is very, very mixed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think, being that vulnerable and that real as a human being is what allows them to feel like you mentioned a few minutes ago, that fear of being able to have that conversation with somebody is that we have to be able to have these conversations so people feel like we're real people, you
yeah.
know? I mean,
Yeah.
we
And I
are.
want to respect a couple things. I host a podcast as well, and I
Mhm.
really am looking for women to come and share their stories who have the willingness and the ability to go to that vulnerable place. And had a conversation with a woman and she told me that based on her own experience and some trauma that she had had, that it wasn't safe for her to be vulnerable. I had a very different experience. I've had a very different experience in my life. I talk candidly about a lot of the things that I've experienced. I never thought about it that way, that for her, vulnerability was an exposure and it was a risk. And
Mhm.
so she keeps those stories close. And I thought, how many of the people that we work with is that true for? And how many of the leaders, to call myself out, that I am saying, you need to be vulnerable and you need to show, particularly for women, there has been a massive risk in our careers to show vulnerability. Are you kidding me? Like
Yeah.
those power suits were not just, keeping us warm in an office that's set temperature for men. They're also keeping us safe from what's really going
Mhm.
on inside of us. And to show any of that is a huge risk. It's changing, but there is still a huge faction of people that will say, nope, no thanks. That's something
Mhm.
I'll talk about with my family, with my friends, my community, but it will not it will not come up in the workplace. And I have to remember, I say this all the time, but we are all at different points on our journeys. We are on
Yep.
different journeys entirely. My experience is not yours. And just making sure that if I'm speaking my truth, that I remember that it's not everyone's and that some people are going to
Mhm.
run towards it and others are going to be like, what is this wackadoodle talking about now with her feelings and
Mhm.
all these abstract words and ideas. And I think we're in a time in our industry where there's a place for all of it. And I think that's the really beautiful, beautiful moment that we're in.
I love that. I love that. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking in my head as well, just baby steps. We don't sometimes I think we think vulnerability has to be like crying on crying at the break room. I
Right.
mean, it doesn't mean some big thing. It could in baby steps, right? So I think, maybe it's just being, sharing something of yourself with a coworker, just something maybe that isn't crucial and earth shattering and dramatic, but just maybe sharing something, that maybe makes you a little uncomfortable, but at the same point isn't like crazy. It doesn't mean we have to be able to have some complete nervous breakdown and share our guts out and, oh my gosh, it doesn't have to be this big dramatic thing. And I think that if we just kind of take baby steps and maybe learn who we can trust, maybe listen to different conversations in the workplace, maybe maybe not share ourselves with certain people because maybe that's not a safe place for us, but really embrace those that are safe so that we can build up that vulnerability muscle, because it is kind of a muscle. You got to kind of exercise it. You got to feel safe, and realizing too that if you do that, again, some areas are not as safe as others. Just, maybe don't invest our safe space in areas that aren't safe. Not I always call it taunting the bear, not taunting the bear with something that, the bear's not capable of handling, right? If we have a boss that's aggressive or isn't a safe place, maybe there's, two people under that boss or whatever that we can go to, maybe a department manager or whatever, and we can say, hey, I I'm maybe thinking about, applying for a promotion or whatever, right? And maybe we don't have to go to that big person, but we can maybe just open up a very light conversation and take those baby steps towards that vulnerability.
Yeah.
Build that muscle.
I love that. I love it. It is, I love the idea of baby steps. And I love that as leaders, we have a bit of a playground at our
Mhm.
disposal to try different things. And I know we talked about the distinction, the leader, we're all leaders, but some have leadership by title. I mean, that's what you're
Right.
there for. You've been empowered and you kind of have an obligation to do a little leading. And so
Mhm.
if culture is ambiguous or you're struggling or employee turnover is high or engagement is low, there's a lot of symptoms of an unhealthy culture in our organizations. And if
Mhm.
you want to start chipping away at it, going first is a really brave thing to do. And you're right. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean you lay in the middle of the conference room and you cry in the fetal position. It means, hey, gang, I've got to make a decision about what we're doing with the XYZ project. And to be honest, I'm struggling.
Mhm.
How many leaders would be brave enough to do that? Not many,
Yeah.
but how many are going to have a team of absolute fans and advocates working for them when they do?
Yeah. Yeah.
It is brave to admit what you don't know. It is brave to show a vulnerability, but I don't think it's a weakness. And I don't want to
Right.
say like I'm living proof, but I have talked about all sorts of things in a very public way. Things that I wouldn't say could have like undone my business, but things that could have turned a lot of people off. And it did just the opposite. And I think it speaks to the craving that we have as humans for just something real. Like, show
Yeah.
me something real. Let me know I'm not alone here and that I'm not the only one on this journey. So,
Exactly. And I'm not, I'm actually, I read a book and I'm actually looking it up right now because I can't, it's something the bus. I can't remember what it was. Oh, The Energy Bus. Have you ever read The Energy Bus by John Gordon?
no.
So it's a really, really great book. And hold on. Boop. Okay. So anyway, I have it on Audible. Hold on. So this is what it looks like for anybody who's on the thing. So anyway, it's for if you're watching the video, it's called The Energy Bus by John Gordon. And what it is that this guy is his car breaks down, so he has to take the bus to work, right? And the bus driver just she's very motivational. She's very like life skills, life whatever, right? And she has kind of this path for being able to create good energy. And like you were saying, the main character is working on a project, and his people that he works with are just not jumping on board and moving where it is. So these life lessons that this bus driver gives him over the course of the time that he has to ride the bus changes his philosophies in life and leadership and being able to run a team. And the book kind of chronicles that. That's kind of a high level of the book, but it's exactly like you were saying, right? Is that by listening, taking the time, being able to be vulnerable, being able to say, hey, I'm really struggling with this part of this project, that on the in the book, it just was such a great example of being able to take those baby steps and saying, hey, like you said, I'm struggling with this project, how can we maybe solve this problem together? It changed everything for his position and his job in the book. And that is so important. It's a very, very thin book. If anybody wants to read it, it's a very, very small book. The book, I mean, if you do it on Audible, I think it's like a 3 hour read. But it was such a great example. It's such a physical, great example of that exact premise.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I'm glad to know he and I are on the same page. I will add that to
Absolutely.
my TBR list. I've
Yep.
got a long stack or a tall stack of virtual ebooks that I'm trying to work my way through. But I love that, and I think it's just a representation that I'm not the only one saying this stuff. He's
Yeah.
not the only one. You're not the only one. And at some point, it will become just the way it is. And I love that we're kind of on the early end of that so that we
Mhm.
can see the progress. But I'm hopeful, the generations coming in are working under a very different set of expectations. And so they're going to continue to push the current leaders and help us to be more brave and more vulnerable. And I love it. I'm here
Me
for
too.
it.
I do too. Like
Yeah.
again, like we said earlier, I'm excited to see where the industry and everything in it's going to be at in 10 years. I mean, it'll be very, very different. So, and I'm super excited because if anybody wants to be able to grow, I know that you also help to be able to coach people, to be able to help them have these conversations and have these thought processes so that they can also be able to make those strides in their career. Maybe if someone struggles with, like you were mentioning, that vulnerability in that moment, maybe they could work with you to be able to kind of step over some of those fears that they have, and kind of try to make sure that they can get their career where they want it to go, or even their personal life. I always tell my husband, if if you want sushi for dinner and I want pizza, and we say, hey, what do you want for dinner? And you go, I don't care. Don't be mad if you don't get your sushi, right? Like, don't be upset with it. So we need to approach life that way. We have to ask for what we want. Part of that takes being vulnerable. It takes being open. It takes being honest. It takes being present, and it takes being communicative. And it takes being sometimes stepping outside of our comfort zone. It takes that need and that desire to grow so that we're better tomorrow than we were yesterday and or today. And I think that for me is so important because I see so many people embracing that right now. And I just know that it's going to be such a great expanse in the industry coming up here in the next few years. And I'm really excited. I'm excited for my daughter who is coming into the industry at 26. I mean, she's been in the industry for a couple of years, but as she comes in, I'm excited for what she's going to see as this is really a maturing industry in these ways.
Yeah. Well, and thanks for showing her what's possible. I think you never know. Little eyes are watching, right? You never know what
Yeah.
kids see when their family members work in our industry. And not all of us have painted a super yummy picture about what a career in insurance can look like. And so it's neat to see that what you've modeled for her is something that she wants to be part of. And I hope that's the case for a lot of the other legacy
Yeah.
kids that are soon going to be joining the industry as well. Goodness knows we need them, and there's enough to go around. I say that all the time as a consultant. Every day, a woman is reaching out to me saying, I think I want to leave my 9 to 5. This is what I want to do. How do I do it? When do I do it? How did you do it? I mean, it's fascinating to be part of these conversations, and the industry can absolutely handle another leadership coach, another women in insurance podcast, another event.
Yeah.
Like there is plenty of opportunity and plenty of room for more of us. And I love, at the end of the day, there's only one you, there's only one me, there's only one of her, whomever she might be. And we all bring, and this is true of all of us, whether we're individual contributors, we're leaders by title, we're leaders by energy. We all bring our own special magic to
Yeah.
what we do. And it's the reason your clients choose to work with you as their insurance agent, because you are who you are and you approach problems the way that you do. And the same things that might be frustrating to your husband or your kid are the reasons these people want to work with you. And so it's, to your point, it's really an embracing and an accepting of those essential parts of who we are, but also being okay getting uncomfortable, but also just with the ridiculous mess of it sometimes.
Yeah.
Like it is not, I did not have a graceful exit from corporate America and landed swiftly on 2 feet with a
No.
six-figure income. Like it
Right.
does not work that way. And so if we can unpack, if we can let go of this is how it's supposed to look and trust that even if it looks messy and discombobulated and like a total disaster, that there's still a possibility it's going to be okay. I think a lot more people would raise their hand. They would take chances. They would bet on themselves if they knew that even in imperfection, it's going to be okay. And I love the messy bits, as Brene would say, our
Yes.
BFF Brene, the messy
Yes.
middle. I thrive in it. I live in it. I have made the most beautiful change in my life in the middle of it, and I'm here for it. So this is great. I just love the way you ask great questions. You get me going down these really interesting paths, and it's just always fun to connect with you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Well, if people want to work with you, because I know you have adjunctadvisors.com, but
Yep.
if people want to work with you, I know you do public speaking. I know that you have the podcast. People can go ahead and get on in there and listen to the podcast, the Bound and Determined podcast, which is awesome. Tell me a little bit about how people can connect with you if they want to be able to work with you, or just pick your brain about anything.
Yeah, so you said it, the website's a great place to start. It's pretty succinct and has all the different ways you can work with me and contact me that way. LinkedIn is also a great spot. I'm, as I mentioned, working on some boundaries with social media and always testing those. So I'm
Yeah.
there and just kind of figuring out to what degree and extent I want to be there and need to be there. But both are great options. Thinking about the new year ahead, I joke, I do a lot of odd jobs in the insurance industry, which can make it really hard to explain to people what I do. But I hope people are thinking after hearing this conversation anything connected to the human experience, whether it's speaking at an event, it's getting your leadership team together, it's putting together one of these offsites, it's doing some consulting work, maybe some research, maybe some writing. All of these are things that I do and I just do them in different quantities and different orders depending on the day, frankly. And
Yeah.
so a lot of what's coming up, definitely speaking at women's leadership events. I've got several on the docket for 2025. I'm really excited about those. And also doing a lot more work with small groups, coaching for producers and also underwriters. So I'm seeing
Nice.
a lot more carriers really latching on to the idea of individual coaching for their team members, knowing that if you make an investment in an employee, they are more likely to
Yeah.
stay. And
Yeah.
so we want our people to know that they're seen and they're valued, and coaching can be a great way to do that. So I will end my little self-promotionally soapbox rant there, but I'm hard on the industry, but I do enjoy it here, and I'm really proud to be able to do the work that I do and in the way that I do it. And I think um, the future looks bright, even on the hard days for all of us.
Love that. I love that. And just remember, everybody out there, it's a journey, right? You don't I mean, when we're done growing, we're done. I think, so if you're still growing, if you're going, if you're popping, if you're taking those baby steps, right? It means you're getting better every single day. And it means that tomorrow we're going to be better than today, right? And it doesn't mean today's going to be amazing. It doesn't mean tomorrow's going to be amazing. But it means maybe, the day after that'll be amazing, right? We just have to stick with it. We have to show up. Showing up is 90% of the battle, and showing up, giving our best every day, doing things that help you to be able to be a better person, to be more uh, rise up in your emotional intelligence so that we can help other people and be able to be that leader in our position, no matter what it is that we do in our home, in our business, everywhere else. So make sure everybody looks up Meg. She's amazing. She's on LinkedIn. She's all over the place. And Meg, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. You've been amazing.
You're the best. Thanks for having me.
I love it. Well, everybody, make sure you check us out. We do have a new episode every single Wednesday. Most Wednesdays, sometimes take a little bit of time off. I'll be very aware on that, but do make sure that you look us on up. We're here for you. Make sure you reach out to me if you know other women in the insurance industry that are doing amazing things. We want to hear from them. We want to know. We want to learn. We want to sit at their feet and bask in their amazingness. So, everybody, we will talk to you next week.